Today we get to acknowledge the deep connection with our soul in a wholehearted way, and to know that we're guided along the way. And when we would go where Ernest would go, up in the mountains, in San Jacinto Mountains, and it's where we send our teens to camp. And my family had a cabin up there, and there was a sign on the wall that my grandma Dee Dee, who had studied with Dr. Ernest Holmes, had put up on the wall, and it said, "All is well." And oftentimes I think of that when I have thoughts that are running amok. Sometimes I have thoughts that are just like out the door, you know, who let the dogs out? And so it's a little bit different than this picture of just saying no to negative thoughts. As I can turn within and know that I'm deeply connected, I know that there's the way that things are possible, and I can be in that place of possibility and power. And what would happen if today I were brave? If today I were courageous in my knowingness that all is well, that all is whole, and that all is at one, and that as I'm able to stop and feel and focus and to see what meaning there is in my thoughts and then take action. So as I'm able to focus and see what meaning there is for me, what rich meaning there is, and then take whatever that action is, I know that whatever anyone has ever told me, I can rely on the truth with the capital T, and not necessarily on other folks' truth with just whatever the truth, and just honor that that's their truth. And to know that the truth with the capital T can inspire and inform my life so that I'm involved in my own life. Dr. Ken Gordon talked at a reception recently, and he's our community spiritual leader for the Centers for Spiritual Living out of Golden, Colorado. And he talked about that in our philosophy, it's much like the Buddha brought to us. We have a Dharma, we have a Buddha, and we have a Sangha. And the Dharma being a teaching, we have a teaching that enriches and enlivens our life. And we have a Buddha, which we're all teachers and we're teachable. And then we have a Sangha, which is a community. And that we may be in the New Thought, Ageless Wisdom tradition, we may be on the cutting edge. But to realize that we're not isolated, but that, yes, we are connected by the soul. We have a collective consciousness, and we are part of the leading edge, especially in our own lives. We're on that leading edge in awakening our magnificence. And as we awaken our magnificence, we also know that that magnificence is awakening humanity as well. So we get to bring the spiritual nature to our humanity, because we may be changing a tire. We may be saying no to negative thoughts. We may be projecting our latest fear. We may be feeling some failure or having some doubt, or we may be having that feeling of being lonely or rejected or not having the most intimate connection that we would like with spirit. And you know how some meditations are deeper than others? Some meditations, some affirmations are more meaningful than others. So that as we pay attention and look at that focus and the meaning that we have, we can take another action. We can make whatever course correction needs to be made. So for instance, if I say purple watermelon, we all have a visual of a purple watermelon, right? And we have that thought, and we can change it, much like the Sandia Mountain changes colors at sunrise and sunset. What if I said basketball? What if I said football? We all have that image we can change. So we can identify and choose our thoughts that are more empowering and positive and optimistic and healthy and well and balanced and in harmony. We can choose again. Dr. Ernest Holmes says that in 15 minutes, and I remember we have this homework of either 2 minutes to 20 minutes stopping throughout the day. It could be 15 minutes, stopping throughout the day in the morning, midday for lunch, take a little, have our mind and heart take a little recess and have that 2-minute interval, that 2-minute refreshing place where we can have something new, have a clear space for something new. So Dr. Ernest Holmes too reaffirms this, that 15 minutes twice each day. He didn't even say 3 times. Last week we had the homework of 3 times a day, morning, noon, and night. 15 minutes twice each day is time enough to spend in order to demonstrate anything. But the rest of the time ought to be spent constructively. What am I constructing? What am I focusing on? What am I creating? What am I co-creating? What am I partnering up in spirit to be? And he says that is, we must stop all negative thinking. Now that sounds like to come to a screeching halt, and I think we can really be gentle with ourselves and have gentle breakthroughs and gentle transformations. And to be a little bit gentle with ourselves and let ourselves off the hook, we can take two, in essence, throughout the day. I've asked us to experiment in this new way of fasting. In this year of spiritual practice, we can have a new way of fasting from negative thoughts, negative people, negative experiences. And as we stop and say no, we can say, no, it's not workable. No, I'd like to engage something else. We can take two throughout the day, whether that's 2 or 20 minutes, or as Ernest Holmes said, 15. And we can take a moment and put, in essence, press the pause button. We can press the pause button on whatever's accelerating in that trend of thinking. And we can say, well, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? And focus and feeling they could equal each other. So what am I thinking and what am I feeling? What is my focus? What is my intent here? And it could be that we focus on something that's outside of ourselves. Sometimes we need to get out of the box of our own, whatever our experience is, and get outside of ourselves sometimes. And we can move from heavy mental things and switch to having mental floss. Sometimes we need to cleanse and have that become part of our habit, our new habit pattern, that as we turn away our focus from that heavy mental to mental floss, we can be cleansed and have that clear space. So what do I focus on? So from this heavy mental to this focus, or this feeling tone that I have, this environment, this atmosphere that I bring with me, everywhere I go, there I am, right? Everywhere I go, this is what I bring. And what does that mean? So as I have a focus, and that as I see what the meaning is that I'm bringing to life, bringing to light, bringing whatever that is, perhaps moving from a dark place into a being of light. And just because we may be in the valley of the shadow, doesn't mean that we hang out there and order cable. We don't need to necessarily just hang out in that valley, oh so low, and turn on the TV while we're there. Hook into whatever that is. My friend Alexias, who I talked with this week, she had her house, it had closed escrow, and she thought that she was a happy camper. The people had actually moved in, and she was receiving rent, and she had the earnest money, and then they had the home inspection after they had moved in. Go figure. What cart was that before that horse? Yeah. So my dear friend Alexias, she says, well, we're out of escrow. It fell apart. And as it was falling apart, it was actually coming together for her, because what it said in the home inspection had a whole checklist, and what she got to do was to keep the $5,000 in earnest money. She got to keep the $5,000 in the rent that the people had moved in, and do the home repairs. Oh, yeah. Who could have ever thought when she woke up that day that she would get that call? And so she could have never prescribed that, but she knew that things were in harmony and divine order. And so instead of her focusing on how awful and bad that situation was, she knew that it brought a resolution, it brought a solution, it brought something new that she could have that resolution. And so as she became more positive about that, what happened, what transpired, we all have things that transpire, whether it's news from a doctor, whether it's that house arrangement that didn't go through, whether it's that conversation that was not so good. And so as I can focus and be in the connection of the soul, and add my meaning to it, Alexia got to add new meaning and have a focus. And she was able to take action and get actually it was an old boyfriend who came with his toolkit, and he's a licensed contractor, and he came all prepared, ready to be the fix-it guy. So not only did she get to, in essence, keep a lot of what caused a little bit of trouble to get there, she had the best outcome that was possible. So as I look at what does it mean? So she added new meaning to that situation that could have been really bad. She had already engaged other places and had her own cart before the horse, in essence. As we add meaning, we can look at Joe Kennedy way back in the Depression time. In 1929, he had $4 million. And in 1932, he ended up having $180 million. During a time where people said, it's awful, it's terrible, this whole environment is awful, and what's going to happen? What he did was he focused on what was possible. He focused on his power. He gave meaning to whatever market share he was able to pick up and to serve, in essence, serve people along the way and be more fortified in that fabric. And he built and he wove his own experience. So whatever nuances were there during those times, he was able to move forward and progress, and he enrolled others in progressing. And sometimes we do this in intimate relationship too. We have that greatest opportunity in the whole world in whatever our relationships are to focus on that which is thriving and that which I give and those strengths and those gifts that I bring. And if we were able to treat people like it was at the very beginning of a relationship, not at, say, an end of a relationship, it's like when you're first in the relationship and you say, gosh, would you take the trash out? Oh, yes, honey, I'd be happy to take the trash out. Oh, my gosh, I live to do it. And boy, it'll get me outside. There's sunshine and rainbows and those 3 balloons that I saw this morning over the house. It is so cool. Yeah, and I'll take the dog out. I'll take the trash out. Way, way too much fun. But if it's at the end of the relationship, it's like, oh, I'm not taking the trash out. No way. So I think what we get to say is, yes way, as we say no way to that, whatever that end might look like, that ending of Alexia's agreement with these people, we can look and say, yes, there is a way. So we can take that trash out and we can, in essence, fall in love with the people in our life. So as we show up and as we love, no matter what that condition looks like, we can, in essence, press that pause button and focus and add meaning and take whatever action needs to be taken. And it does take some examination. I get to stop and focus and see what it means to myself and what I can bring to the table and what action I need to take. And sometimes we may be thinking that we're accurate and we're credible and we're justifiable and we have got all this stuff going on. Yeah, I'm justified that these people backed out of that agreement, and I'm justified that, well, okay, I'll finally call my honey and he can come over and be the fix-it MacGyver Renaissance kind of guy. But sometimes if we're in the midst of it and there's that angry voice that comes up, we can almost never trust that angry voice to be accurate. We can almost never trust it. And so as I ask, what action do I take? What action do I take? Sometimes I have to go back and say, what focus is there? What feeling is there? What does it mean? And what action? What am I accountable for? Where am I coherent? Where am I congruent in this? How do I see my part in it? What is my part in this? Perhaps I didn't have the home inspection prior to, So as I listen to whatever voice pops up, I'll give you an example of when I was at an airport and there was this man. I had run across the airport to get in line because I knew I had a really small space between connecting flights. And so I ran and oh my gosh, I was there, right there, and I had already done my pre-boarding pass and I was a good gal and had my carry-on, didn't have all the check-on stuff to worry about. And boy, I was right there in no time. And had to go through 2 terminals to get there. And this man cut in front of me, and I'm thinking, what's happening? Oh my gosh, I'm at the airport, and I lost my place in line. no, and I deserve better than this. How could this guy go in front of me? Oh my gosh, I had done everything possible. And, I have all these angry thoughts. I'm thinking, he only cares about himself. Who is this guy? In this angry voice and all these inaccuracies. Who is this guy? Who does he think he is? What is he thinking? And as I looked out for truth, the truth of that, he wasn't an enemy who had just taken away my space in the carpet. And I could say, well, how could I do compassionate communication and say, I'm experiencing that I've lost my place on the carpet. Or I'm experiencing that I won't get those salted nuts that I can't get on the ground, but you can only get in the air, right? And that little drink, it's like we get those little nuts, and you can't get those at Walmart or anywhere else. I can't wait to get on board. And so that's my spot. Or what else could I say? I notice you stepped ahead of me. I'm watching on the unfoldment. I noticed this, or I'm acknowledging that I don't have my space in line anymore. I'm acknowledging that I'm thinking I'm going to be late. And I had to take a breath, and I could say, you're going to get on the plane before me. That would be like a you directive. Or I'm distressed because of, or I'm in despair because I won't be able to have that tray that comes down in the best time where I'll be able to be refreshed after my run across the airport. And after I'd had all these thoughts, the man looked at me straight in the eye, and he acknowledged me. He nodded, and he got back in his spot without me having to say a thing. And it disappeared. And it's all that meaning that I had given to it, all that meaning and all that feeling that I had about losing that loss that I had, all that negative thinking. So I can rely on focusing back in and saying, I'm going to get on the plane. It's going to be okay. We're in progress. I'm going to be provided for. I'm going to have the nourishment of the nuts and the 7-Up in time, And I watched this video that's been going around on the internet, and it was about people who have first world problems, and it was read by people in the third world. And I visited places like this, like in Haiti, and people having experiences and just listening to the voices. So not only the voices that are within me about the man at the airport, but ironically, the video was focusing on clean water, for these people to have clean water, which I can imagine that most of us in this room have clean and running water. So the people in the third world countries were reading what the troubles were. And it was, for instance, I just hate it when my neighbor turns off the Wi-Fi. I just hate it when my phone cord won't reach my bed from my nightstand. I just hate it when the laundry stays in my washer all too long and begins to have a little stench. I just hate it when people take my place in line. And so if that's the only stress we have in life, our life must be really good. We have clean water. We have a loving community that we can be in love with. We are making, sometimes we can make the meaning. Am I making a scene like at the airport inside my head? I never said anything to the guy, but am I making a scene, whether that's internal or external, or one isn't necessary? It just was not necessary. But it was essential that I came back into focus. It was essential that I figured out what that meaning was. And so much like Dr. Ken Gordon talked about, we have the teaching, and we have which is the Dharma, we have the Buddha, which is the teacher, and we're all teachers and being teachable, and we have this loving Sangha, this community. We have what the Buddha said as far as in our book of the month, which is on patience, and it's by Alan Locos, this book on patience. It's the art of peaceful living. And in this book, he quotes Buddha, who recommends that we overcome the angry by gentleness. I got to listen and be gentle with myself And fortunately, I was gentle with the man in the airport. We get to overcome the mean-spirited by kindness. Now, I don't think the people where the house was lost were mean-spirited, but they had their own interests to look after. And actually, after my friend came into a realization and acknowledged that it was beneficial for everybody, it really was. It was beneficial for everybody. Even more, I think, even more beneficial for her. She got to have a little bit more kindness for herself. We get to overcome the greedy by being generous. Thinking of those third world countries and really how we have a very, very good life. We got to overcome, in essence, whatever those deceiving thoughts are by truth with a capital C. And sometimes we have those things, like if we were to stay in that valley and hang out and have cable. So how do I get there from point A to point B? What is my spiritual practice? We're in a year of spiritual practice where we focus and we have meaning and we take those actions. And in essence, when we need to change a tire, or for instance, if I'm chilly, it was chilly in the morning, we have fall, which is fallen. It's not necessarily that I just sit in my chair and I raise up my own internal radiator. It could be that I need to go get a sweater. It could be that I take action. And it could be that we're not just like Rodin's thinker and we have all these negative thoughts and that then they turn positive or whatever that is. It could be that we need to step up and step forward. Or there's something behind Vanna White's steel door number 1, 2, or 3, or whatever that steel door is. It's not that we're going to have laser vision like Superman and see through whatever's being kept from us. But we're going to instead open that door. And it could be that we open that door wider on those relationships. We open that door wider on whatever that financial agreement like the house would have been. We open that door wider on that optimal health. So spiritual practice, in essence, it's a systematic tool or technique which we can take hold of that latent mind or latent power, that latent spiritual power, because it already resides. It already is resident. We're in this house. We've already taken up residency, and knowing that we're engaged in that spiritual power and presence already. And I had a reminder, a note from this gym I belong to. Those letters you get with the window, the little window. Sometimes you get those things that have the window envelope. And it was so compassionate. It said, we noticed you have not been here. How can we help? We have noticed. So sometimes I get to notice what I need to focus on and give meaning if I need to work out and have a spiritual workout. If you really want to do something, you'll find a way. And if you don't, you'll find an excuse. And the only bad workout is the one that didn't happen. You don't always get what you wish for. You get what you work for. Again, I get to take action on what I'm focusing on. Think a 20-minute workout won't do anything. Well, it's sure better than a 0-minute workout. It's much better than doing nothing. And for instance, there's yesterday, you said tomorrow. So today we get to say it's today. And we take this with us. And we know that we can notice that we've not been here. And if there's an area in my life that I've not been present, what I get to do is be present and add my presence to that, because my presence is a gift. I've been focusing in my own life on recreation and then also having some recreation. So I get to have recreation, that's a continuous process, recreation in this co-creation process called life. And then I also get to have some recreation. So I was at Bark in the Park yesterday. So I got to have more wags and less bark and meet some nice people. I got to have remembrances of the dogs who I've had before. And if I had a gentleman and a scholar who was with me for 14 and a half years. He was actually my first dog, because I grew up at the beach, and I never had dogs because they had fleas. And my folks never let me have a dog. And so when I moved to Arizona, I was actually on my way back. He was from Gallup, New Mexico. We had taken a road trip to Texas because my former sister-in-law had been the minister in Midland, Texas for the Centers for Spiritual Living there. And so we had this 12-hour road trip, had to stop at every humane society on the way back. And there his little face, this guy's little face was there. His name was going to be Hoover, but it sounded like too big for him, so he was Kirby. Kirby with C-U-R-B, Kirby, not Cur-A. And so we got him where the reservations were. It could have been a taco, I guess, if his little face wasn't there in the weekend drop-off box. And so his tribal name was Free to Good Home. And we picked him up and gave him a really good home. And so he got to live on a creek. And when the time came, he was in the to put him down after 14 and a half years. And he was such a gentleman and a scholar. We did, just so many wonderful things. He was outside we backed up to a national forest, and on the side, he helped dig his own resting place where he would be. His little hips wouldn't work, and he had dog dementia, which he was like barking the whole night before. But he went out and he was digging on the side of the hill. And we realized that the most compassionate thing that we could do is put him on my lap in the car and have that be a real peaceful experience for him. And the grief never goes away. And so sometimes I have to take things an hour at a time, and oftentimes that story is over here and not necessarily right here in front of me. But to have those remembrances as I was looking at all these dogs and people who looked like him yesterday, and just really, and he was can hardly tell what he was. A muttly, a canardly, he really, but he true near and dear to my heart. And so to take things, sometimes at that experience I had to just take one breath at a time. Not even one day at a time, but I had to take 1 hour at a time. And I had really good friends who were there, not only the morning when he was digging, but people who surrounded us throughout the following weeks. And it was hard. It was tough. It was tough to release and to let go and let be. And sometimes we have to take things in increments and know that there's something that's manageable in our lives. And so a way to have things that are manageable is we can use what Sean Aker calls the Zorro Circle. And he's a Harvard psychologist, and he has a book called the Happy Advantage. And a friend of mine, Reverend Dan Mueller, who's been a Unity minister and is part of this community, he's been a Unity minister for over 30 years, he was talking about having a timer and setting it for 30 minutes. And I said, I do that on my cell phone. I'll set 30-minute increments on my cell phone so that they're biteable chunks. If I have to clean my desk, I'll clean my desk for 30 minutes. And so what we're invited to do is to have those chunks, those manageable goals, and then we can, in essence, expand our sphere of power. And it was Don Diego who taught Zorro. And I know some of us remember Zorro from the little black and white TV that we bought with the blue chip stamps, the little black and white TV. And for those of you who don't know about black and white TV, more power to you. we now have these flat screen things. But this Harvard psychologist says that we can draw ourselves a small Zorro Circle and to be teachable, much like the Buddha says to be. And we can take that one day at a time, or we can take that 1 hour at a time. And it's like if somebody said, I need you to drop and give me 100 push-ups. Right now, I'm not doing 100 push-ups, but if you ask me to do 1 or 10, it's the same thing like the 2 minutes or the 20 minutes, 3 times a day, twice a day, once a day. Take your pick to be in spiritual practice. And it's much like having that plaque at the cabin where we can go and rejuvenate and have a new experience of our focus and our meaning and what actions we'll take, and knowing that all is well, and that we thrive and we live in this universe that is for us and where nothing is against us. And to know that what appears in our life, we can, much like the next song we're going to be hearing, by Janice Stanfield. She's on TED Talks, and she does positive music. She says, I didn't know what to call it. It just came out of me. I have this positive music that I share. And she goes to all these corporate types of parties and shares her positive message. But she too asks us to have focus and meaning and take action. And so she talks on TED Talks about having courage to create. And there's a French word called courage, where it takes heart and it takes spirit to create, to innovate, to relate, and to collaborate. And that as we have and restore our individual purpose, as Dr. Ken Gordon was talking about, awakening our magnificence, we also restore that courage and that collective courage and have that heart and spirit to restore that, and knowing that there's power and possibilities. So I invite us to have focus and meaning and action this week. And what if we lived our life having that unseen guest, having the unseen listener, and bring that to every conversation, to know that instead of making a scene, we can be seen as spirit and be that transparency of spirit. So I'm very grateful for this time, and I know that truly all is well. And I invite us to be in this place of centeredness and knowing that there is the connection of the soul, and to turn within for this moment of inner celebration. There is the presence and power which resides within, and knowing that we truly are engaged already, engaged and committed in this place of infinite possibilities and this purity and this clear, open space. There's an opening of the heart of the spirit of the soul. And I know that it is everywhere present. And in this place of divine guidance, divine order, and divine timing, there is a way. There is always a way. So knowing that that way is made clear, and it is powerful, and it is joyful, and filled with peace and possibility, and filled and overflowing with love, I know that I am connected in this love, and that I show up as love. And in this place of being without condition, the knowing that our conditioned thoughts can just be made aware of, and to notice throughout the day the empowerment, of the optimism, of the positive nature, that divine nature which we're bringing to our humanness. I know that there is an awakening of this magnificence in this magnificent day, and that bringing forward all of the health and the vibrant life, the living spirit, the living essence which resides within, knowing that every cell and every knowing place in our body knows what to do. And I know that the harmonizing prosperity is thriving, that there is an acceptance of the abundant universe, and yes, it is generous, it is kind, it is in the gentle flow of smoothness, and it knows what to do. And I know that in the intimate relationships, in our inner circle, our outer circle, we have those beautiful relationships which enhance and enliven and enrich our lives. And that, yes, we can have that circle, and that out of that sphere of that circle it expands, expanding in this place of the present, very present moment. I'm very grateful for the deep peace which is ever available as love, of joy, of exuberant enthusiasm, and knowing that the energy continues to be supportive and enlightening and enlivening. And I'm grateful as I release this word into the action of the law, knowing that it is done and that it is this guiding light. And so be it, and so I celebrate, and so it is. And please join us in a few moments of silence and stillness.